Hello and welcome back to the show.
Oopsie, the worst rapper alive. Oops. Yeah. Big Mac's back on the mic like oops. Back on the horse, still jumping through hoops. I'm missing Lincoln Pink, I don't lip sync. Just to be clear, choking isn't my kink, but I do it anyway sometimes, I guess. Gotta laugh now, die later in my times of stress. I'm blessed, feeling good, charged up like a Hadouken.
Mota Zitabadakis, welcome into the Worst Wrestling Podcast. I am your host with the least, Jack Lucene. We have been on hiatus for like a month. I really thought I'd be able to keep up with all three shows during the season, but it's been killer. I got a lot of things going on in my personal life as well. So I've had to actually dial back on the wrestling show and the interview shows. It's been just the fantasy football stuff this time of year. But I wanted to jump on. I did watch Crown Jewel today, so I thought it would be fun to jump on live stream and just do a fun little review of today's show, kind of touch base with what's been going on in the world of the WWE, and just kind of predict and project what will be going forward into WWE War Games. So, without further ado, let's start with the OTC, Roman Reigns and the Usos, the original Bloodline, taking on the new evil version of the Bloodline.
They took his dog. They broke it there. Took it there.
They took his phone. But yes, the evil Bloodline has been running roughshod across SmackDown. The new tribal chief Solo Sikoa, backed by the Samoan werewolf Jacob Fatu and the Tongas. And they would take on a reunited Roman Reigns and the Usos. We had the separate entrances, OTC and Jimmy coming out together, Jay coming out on his own. Amazing entrance for Jey Uso, who is easily one of the most popular superstars in the WWE. It's funny, I saw on Twitter something about, he's too popular to go back to being a tag team act. I don't think that's the intention at all. Of course, him and his brother have the ability to be in a tag team, but I think Jey Uso has clearly separated himself as a single superstar. And if anything, the treatment that he received just in the entrances, I think, signifies that. But as far as the actual match was concerned, this is starting to be very typical of Bloodline matches where the match itself is kind of paint by numbers and doesn't actually matter. And what matters is what happens after the match. Like, this is like, this has become like Marvel movies where the actual content of the movies isn't as good as the spoiler after the previews. But inevitably, we did get a deciding win finally for Solo Sikoa and this new Bloodline, spiking Roman Reigns into the mat and pinning him relatively clean. Like, there was a ref bump, but it wasn't really that relevant. So this was basically a clean win over Roman Reigns, which will obviously set up War Games. But I think also everything we saw afterwards with Sami Zayn. So typical Bloodline feud and story after the match, after Solo Sikoa had won with the double spike to Roman Reigns. They start putting the beat down to Jay, Jimmy, and Roman. And it's Sami Zayn who shows up to make the save. And at one point, you have Solo Sikoa kind of in the middle of the ring, surrounded in all four corners by the original Bloodline. And I thought this was going to be one of those he eats a finisher from each of them kind of situation. But no, this ended up actually setting the seeds of distrust and dissension and tension between Sami Zayn and the original Bloodline, and specifically Roman Reigns, because Roman would go for a super punch and Sami Zayn would go for a haluva kick. Solo would duck out of the way, and Sami would hit Roman with the haluva kick. So just kind of a reminder of, what was viewed as the betrayal of Sami Zayn and ultimately the feud that he had with Roman Reigns. But I think this is just going to set up, obviously, kind of the reunification of the original Bloodline heading into War Games. Sami will be the fourth man, and we'll get Sami Zayn, the Usos, and Roman Reigns going against this new version of the Bloodline at War Games. That's going to be the main event. The Fatal 4-Way Women's Tag Team Championship match was next, featuring Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill versus Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, who I think have become unsung heroes of the women's division, especially on SmackDown. But also against newcomers Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson. Lash Legend especially looks like $1 million. And Io Sky and Kairi Sane of Damage Control also featured in the match. It was a decent match. It was a great match overall. I thought all the women looked great. I especially look forward to future matches between the Meta Girls and Jade and Bianca. So Lash Legend, there was a they teased the standoff between Jade Cargill and Lash Legend. And I think that just kind of gives you a purview into how deep of a roster the WWE women's division has become, where it's like, not only do we have Jade Cargill, who we poached from TNA, who is, a spectacular, phenomenal athlete in her own right, we have our own in-house talent that we brought up through NXT and Lash Legend, who can match her physically, which is, a crazy thing to say. So I love the emergence of Lash Legend. And I think, again, Meta Girls and Jade Bianca is absolute money tag team matches in the women's division. But Piper Niven is one of my favorites. She's just such a gangster. I love Chelsea Green. I love the dynamic also between Piper Niven and Chelsea Green. I think they're very deserving of a run with the tag team titles. And I even would love to see a run with the women's championship, the SmackDown Women's Championship, on Chelsea Green specifically, with Piper Niven as an enforcer. And then rather than doing the thing of, where Piper eventually turns on her and is the one to take the championship, you could just have Chelsea lose the championship and have Piper win it back, and then have Chelsea be in a managerial role. And I would love to see a dynamic between them where they can support each other as single stars and as a tag team without ever having to do the implode and kind of, go against each other. But yeah, I really love Piper Niven especially, but obviously Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair would retain here. They're on a dominant run with those tag team championships. I think they are setting up, like I mentioned, Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair versus the Meta Girls, Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson, and I am 100% here for that. After that, we got Seth Rollins versus Bronson Reed. This was a pretty solid match overall. Rollins would run up and attack Bronson Reed on the ramp, and there was this really sick spot where they kind of fight down to ringside, and Bronson Reed power slams Seth Rollins into an office chair. And it's one of those spots that probably isn't as bad as it looks, but holy fuck, does it just look shitty. Like, in terms of, like, it looks like it hurts. So I would be kind of almost like curious, because I'm like, if I definitely think, like, if I did a cannonball into, my office chair as opposed to just like the wall, like, that would hurt less. But I still feel like, and especially because it seemed like he took the arm of it in the back, like, it's not painless, that's for sure. But this was a great, like, destructive match. As soon as they got in the ring, Bronson Reed hit a tsunami, like almost as soon as the bell rings. And instead of going for the cover, he goes for a second tsunami. He misses, and Rollins gets him with the stomp. But he kicks out, and they just kind of keep going. I love thick boy moves. There's this moment where Seth Rollins goes for a sunset flip, and Bronson Reed just sits on him, like just straight up, just splats him into the mat. So I love Bronson Reed. But the finish itself was really solid too. So Bronson Reed, they fight back to the outside, and Reed grabs the stairs, and he's running at Rollins with the stairs, and Rollins goes for the knee. Bronson kind of falls face first into the stairs, and then Rollins gives him the stomp on the steps, and Bronson just, again, very monster-like, just keeps coming forward with that thick head, just gets in the ring, but he eats another stomp and then a super stomp, and Rollins walks away with the win. But just like any good monster movie, you see Bronson Reed stirring at the end, so you know that the monster's coming back for, part 7. So this is a feud that probably is not over. I wouldn't even be shocked if Bronson Reed is the reason that Seth Rollins does not win the Fatal 4-Way tomorrow night on Monday night, which is also going to still be in Riyadh. But yeah, they're going to have a Fatal 4-Way to determine the number 1 contender for the World Heavyweight Championship, which was announced on the show. It will be Seth Rollins versus Damian Priest versus Dom Mysterio versus someone that I am forgetting. Yeah, I cannot for the life of me remember who the 4th person was. But Seth Rollins, I think, is either going to win that, and we're going to get Seth versus Gunther, or potentially I could see Bronson Reed costing him that match. Maybe we get a rematch of Damian Priest and Gunther. That's possible, but I actually think they're just going to end up going with Seth versus Gunther at Survivor Series. That makes the most sense, to be honest. And then we got the first of the Crown Jewel titles. It was Nia Jax versus Liv Morgan for the Crown Jewel Women's Championship. Kind of a little back and forth. We got to some cool spots with the Super Samoan drops, and then the Sunset Flip Powerbomb. And then it's Tiffy time. This shtick's starting to get old at this point. Like, I'm getting really sick of how they're incorporating Tiffany Stratton into this storyline, because she just generally looks incompetent is the thing also. So she comes down to do the cash in, and Nia just says no, not right now, and basically sends her to the back. And then Tiffany is kind of on her way back, and then she kind of starts running back down to the ring. And the next thing you know, Raquel Gonzalez and Dom Mysterio show up. And now it just becomes this weird overbooked mess where Raquel and Tiffy are fighting over the briefcase. And then at one point, Dom kind of whips the briefcase into the middle of the ring, and the ref picks it up. And then Dom is distracting her on the ref on the side of the ring, while Nia is trying to go for an annihilator, and Raquel Gonzalez gets involved. Ultimately leads to Liv Morgan hitting the Oblivion and getting the pin here and becoming the inaugural Crown Jewel Women's Champion. And I thought it was funny because when she was holding the title, the title is damn near as big as Liv Morgan. So I thought that was really funny. But shout out to Liv Morgan. Her ascension through the ranks of the women's division has been notable, to say the least. And so congratulations to her. Next, we got the concept of a match. So this was very much, this was not a match. This was a fight. And I can see, it's funny because I can see them literally how they're writing the story in the back of guys, this isn't a match. This is just a fight. But it's ultimately just setting up for the continuation of the feud. I am, of course, referring to and talking about Randall Orton versus Kevin Owens. So before the match even begins, before the bell even rings, Kevin Owens starts attacking Randy Orton with a chair. They fight to the outside. We get some backdrops on the tables, courtesy of Randy Orton. Ultimately, they go back in the ring, and KO tries to attack Randy Orton with the chair again, but the ref grabs the chair from him and boom, hits the stunner on the ref. Next thing we know, it gets really chaotic because, like, next thing you know, security's running down the ring, getting their ass kicked while they're trying to fight each other. All of a sudden, the general managers, like Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis, come running down to the ring, and Randy Orton hits Adam Pearce with an RKO. Adam Pearce sold it like $1 million, so that was cool. And they keep fighting to the outside. Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, they fight all the way through the crowd over to like this like obvious table set up. But it's like, it is what it is. They fight, and then Kevin Owens grabs this like road case and just starts smashing Randy Orton with it to set him up on the table. And then he goes up the stairs and jumps off the rail, big elbow through the table, and that's how we close out that segment. But obviously that's going to lead to some kind of last man standing match or I quit match or whatever it is between Randy Orton and Kevin Owens. This feud is far from over. And then we got a commercial for the next SummerSlam, which I thought was really interesting. Announcing it once again, it'll be a 2-day SummerSlam. The commercial featured Bianca Belair and Cardi B, kind of going back and forth about the details. But they announced it will be in MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. So that is obviously where the Jets and Giants play. So I think that's going to be a hell of a fucking show next year. And then, I keep saying and then, we got the best match of the night, in my opinion. Carmelo Hayes versus Andrade versus LA Knight. Triple threat match for the U.S. Championship. LA Knight's style is so contrasting to Andrade and Carmelo that it is borderline comical. And even shout out to Big E on the after show when he asked LA Knight about his loins, because there was this spot where LA Knight crotched himself. He was trying to jump up on the ropes. He tried to do that thing where he leaps and lands on the ropes, but he slipped and straight up just like crotched himself on the ropes. It was hilarious. The fact that he no-sold it actually that's the kind of thing of like, maybe this is just a pet peeve, but it's like, and I get it because I feel like for him, it fits his character. The thing of like, I feel like he should have sold that he slipped and fell and crotched himself. But the problem was that it was clearly set up to be like the lead to the finish. So he ends up hitting the German off the top rope on Andrade. Melo hits nothing but net. LA Knight kicks out. And then Melo hit this release. He was going for like a hurricane run, a face plant, but then LA Knight caught him in the BFT. And it was like a BFT while that forced Melo to also face plant Andrade. So it was like he took them both out in one move. And that was how LA Knight ended up winning the match. Yeah. So LA Knight does remain U.S. champion. I actually would have liked to see it go on either of the other guys. This is just one of my pet peeves in WWE, that it feels like every guy that gets a title has to hold it for minimum 3 to 6 months. I would like to see some more back and forth with this is a perfect opportunity of you have a feud set up between 3 very competent superstars. There's not a single reason that Carmelo Hayes could not have walked out with the title, and then you could have had a situation where Carmelo wins the title here, and then you have Andrade win the title off Carmelo, and then you have LA Knight win the title off Andrade, and now you set up now you have a feud of Carmelo and LA Knight, because LA Knight won the title from Andrade, who beat Carmelo, but he never actually beat Carmelo. So it's like, again, you have all these caveats and ways that you could build all three of these guys into multiple, like multi-time US champions. So I mean, that's the only thing that I really, I was disappointed in. Crown Jewel was awful. I don't know that it was awful, Bradley Archer. I got to disagree with you. There were definitely some matches that I liked less than others. I don't think that it was awful. I would say it was a resounding meh. If that meant, I'm not one of these like super positive creators that's gonna come out here and tell you it was the fucking bee's knees. But I thought OTC versus Bloodline, the stuff with Sami Zayn at the end was decent. Seth Rollins versus Bronson Reed was awesome. Randy Orton versus Kevin Owens, even though it was a non-match, like I kind of saw where they were going with it, so I didn't hate that. And the match I just talked about, the triple threat, was really solid. So I thought it was a solid show across the board. Plus the crowd was lit. But yeah, I can understand if you didn't like it. And again, I'm not out here to tell you this is the greatest fucking show ever, but awful feels like a strong word. But yeah, Cody versus Gunther, the main event for the Crown Jewel men's championship, this giant gaudy piece of shit belt. But this was the thing. It was a really solid match. I didn't super like the finish personally, but I understood it. And I actually think that the more that I sat on the finish, the better I felt about it. So, really solid chain wrestling to start. The only thing that I thought was a little off was the tempo at the beginning. I thought it was a little slow. I know that's kind of Gunther's thing, but I would love a situation where it's like, if you're going to go in there and you're going to try and out wrestle Gunther, I want to see a little higher tempo. Not obviously, no one's ever going to match the intensity of like, and Jesus Christ, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. If you remember their matches, a lot of like the shit that they did that was so great was just the chain wrestling at the beginning of the match, the back and forth, the counters and then eventually into a standoff. That they did it with such a fervor and a tempo and a pace that, it really made you believe like, holy shit, like these guys are going at it, like, and it's just straight up grappling. And that tempo and fervor was just a little bit lacking, I felt like, in the beginning of the match. And so I can see how you could see that as kind of boring. But ultimately, the pace of the match picked up. I love Gunther. Gunther is by far my favorite wrestler in the world right now. The shit that he does with just what I love about Gunther is the simplicity of like when he counters the bionic elbow with just a chop from hell, just literally chop the soul out of Cody's body. And there was another spot too where Cody goes for the suicide dive on the outside and he catches him in like a spine buster move and he throws him into the apron. And what, again, is such simple things of the way that a human body reacts when you throw them spine first into something is to go like this, right? That's just a natural human reaction. And as soon as Cody did that, Gunther was right there with the fucking chop. That's the kind of like, I love wrestling, professional wrestling, when they're able to mimic aspects of real wrestling and fighting, because a lot of MMA and a lot of amateur wrestling is based on your opponent's movement, right? So it's like, yeah, if I pull your head down and your instinct is to snap your head back up, you're probably not thinking about your legs at that point. And so you're leaving yourself open for an attack. It's a lot of, moving with the person and reacting to how they are moving. And so when professional wrestlers are able to incorporate that into their moveset, I feel like it just legitimizes and makes their shit look so much better. And Gunther's a fucking king for that kind of stuff. Again, just the idea that like I throw you in back first into something, you're going to do this, boom, right there with the chop. And those fucking chops, you can just hear them right through the arena. Oh, so like I said, Gunther just an absolute mensch. But the multiple attempts at the power slams by Cody too. It's like that's the kind of shit that takes me completely out of the match in terms of realism, because it's like, bro, if your back hurts, why the fuck would you try to power slam a dude that's like bigger than you? Again, it's like the complete lack of any strategy and thinking, and just turning into Rhodeslander, where he's like, beat the shit out of me so I can fire up. Like, I love Cody Rhodes. I think the hate that some people lay on him is way too intense, but that is the kind of shit that, like, I get it. I get why some people don't like Cody Rhodes. And I did think the finish was kind of cheap. I loved the story that they were telling of Gunther being a little too insistent on wanting to win specifically with the sleeper so that he could embarrass Cody Rhodes. And I loved that ultimately was his downfall. I just think the way they did it with so Cody goes for the super cutter and Gunther catches him in the sleeper, and then it was almost like reminiscent of Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker in 2006, when Undertaker has him in the Hell's Gate, which is essentially a Peruvian necktie. It kind of looks like a triangle choke. And then Kurt flips over and is able to turn it into a pin. That one was sneaky and looks cool as fuck. This one, I've seen them kind of do. They've done a similar thing before. The idea that Gunther specifically would get caught with this kind of shitty little, to call it a pinfall even is like, and again, just the way that he was kind of kicking his feet, it was cartoonish almost, of like, I just felt like Gunther specifically, this was kind of a cheap finish. But at the same time, I understand that they wanted Cody to win, but they did not want a resounding win that made Gunther look any way weak. Like, I think the reason they went with like the sneaky bullshit finish is because, yeah, it really is just like, that happens sometimes in professional wrestling. I think you can get away with that, but like the idea that like Gunther was just staring him down, and I don't know that I would be any more satisfied if they went with like the triple crossroads. I just feel like the way they went with the sneaky finish, with again just kind of rolling over on the sleeper and getting the pin that way, felt a little cheap. I feel like they could have got there in a better way, but I don't hate the decision. And kind of the more I marinated on it, I'm like, you had to have Cody win this, I think, for two reasons. One, besides the fact that I think they internally view the WWE Universal title as the main title, I also think that Cody Rhodes, specifically as a superstar, needed this one a lot more than Gunther right now. I think Gunther is on such a tear with what he did with the Intercontinental Championship and what he's now doing with the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw. I don't think Gunther needed this at all. Cody Rhodes, I think what people have been lamenting since WrestleMania is that Cody Rhodes hasn't really had like truly meaningful wins. Like, he had the feud with AJ Styles where he got kind of those two back-to-back wins. Fucked around with Solo Sikoa for a little bit, but then ultimately Roman Reigns came in and like handed him that win. So it's like, when you really look at Cody Rhodes's title reign so far, and since WrestleMania, what has really been like the true, the true win that kind of marks his championship run, this is it. I think this is now going to be the thing that legitimizes Cody's run. When you think about him holding the title for a year now, because I do think he's holding it until WrestleMania at this point, and he could definitely lose it at WrestleMania, but when you now think about his year-long title reign, you're going to remember he beat Roman Reigns for it. He had the feud with AJ and Solo, but then the big win over Gunther at Crown Jewel for the Crown Jewel Championship in the champion versus champion match. So again, I think this is a no pun intended, crowning achievement for the title reign of Cody Rhodes that I really think legitimizes what was a little bit stagnant of a title reign, if I'm not going to lie. But hey, that's it for me. I'm going to try really hard over the next couple of weeks to get in some pre-records and get some episodes out for you guys. I am still on, technically speaking, supposed to be every 2 weeks right now during the fantasy season is what we had planned. I'll try not to go on hiatus for a month again. But for now, I'm doing my best just to keep up with the show in general. So I don't want to make any promises, but again, I'm going to try really hard to work on a couple episodes and get some pre-records out so that there's a little bit more of consistency going forward. Once we get into the off season of football and I don't have to do the fantasy show as much anymore, then I'll be kind of back full force. But until then, I don't know if it's going to be exactly weekly or bi-weekly, but hang in with me. I know I'm going to have some episodes coming out for you guys. I don't want to give up on doing the wrestling aspect of the channel. So again, just bear with me. We'll make it through. But until the next time, I'll catch all of you guys on the flip side.
Contact results in affirmative impact. Never vulgarize on raps. I'm never primitive, but cannibalistic, vicious characteristics, hereditary potency, episodic genes, yo. Empathy, HMCs at extraordinary speed. Some of me is like some of the razor blades and grease in your bare feet. I see your fucking colleagues misprise you very much to your dismay. So today, I can say you won't be running away. Hold your tail between your legs. I'm gonna advocate when you feel below stakes. I'll take a hacksaw to you cockeyed, mumble rap, slack jaws. Leave you shredded on the side like some coleslaw. The double time with that clothesline from hell like Bradshaw. I'm toxic like Sap